Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Inflight. I'm Sol Vashes.
And I'm Norm Murray, aka Explain 1972.
It's great to be here today. Thank you guys so much for joining us again. It's been a while since we've talked. We have been off for quite a bit because I noticed that I wasn't completely happy with the way the episodes were turning out, and I wanted to reformat the show and make it a little bit more natural because it felt really, really rigid, everything, and the conversations didn't really feel fluid. So we've done a lot of work behind the scenes in order to make sure that that is not the case anymore. Interviews are a lot more fluid and they're a lot more of a conversation than just me asking a question and then the interviewee answering them. And also, removing the news section. We're going to be speaking about the news and talking about one or two topics here and there, which we'll get to in a little bit. But that's that's the general gist of what has changed. Everything is pretty much in the same place. Besides that, we're still going to be interviewing guests and we're still going to be talking about the news. We're just not going to be going down the list. We figured that if you're listening to the podcast, you're here to listen to people talk and not listen to something that you could simply read on the website. So, part of that change, as I said, was making conversations more fluid. And I thought to myself, and I also listened to myself many times while I was recording, and I noticed that I needed somebody else to pitch in here and there in areas where I lacked a little bit because I'm not a perfect person. And here and there, I am not able to come up with something to say or think of something. And immediately I thought, why not get a second co-host, an official co-host? Because as you guys know, Magnus is the CEO of Threshold. He was on for one episode, but that didn't continue because we simply could never find times because there's a massive time zone difference between us. So as I was thinking about people to invite, I thought about Norm, who is, as you heard, our new co-host, because Norm and I have had a few conversations before, and we have a very, very good flow, I think. And I'm really, really excited this episode to have his first interaction with me, his first like main interview be with Cessnarox. So that will be happening later. But for now, it is my pleasure to introduce Norm.
Hey, Sol, how you doing? First of all, let me say thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to actually share this platform with you and being a part of the team here because I love the podcast that I've listened to so far from Threshold. And I think you're doing a great job anyway on it. But I'm just so happy to join it, man. Definitely. And I think this is something that the flight sim community needs more of. So I'm happy to be a part of it. If you guys don't know me, my name is Norman Murray, but otherwise known as Explain 1972. Basically, I'm an up and coming YouTube streamer. And some of you guys might see me on YouTube, some of you might not, but when you get a chance, check it out, join it. But not just streaming, I'm also involved in just looking at what's going on in the community itself, especially with the news, the development, and so I thought fitting that the first episode I get to be on has to do with a brand new airplane coming out that causing a stir and an excitement and controversy, which is the Toliss A321. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So I would say let's get to it, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are living under a rock, no, that's harsh. If you have not been completely updated on the news, about 2 months ago, I think it was around the December 20th time, Tolias, who is responsible for the very popular A319, announced that they were developing an A321, which is yet to be seen in X-Plane 11 besides Peter Hager's A321, which wasn't as popular since it lacked some system depth. But they announced that, and it has generated a lot of hype. And in my opinion, it's quite understandable since you are speaking to somebody who is probably the largest A321 fanatic that there is. I literally lost my mind when I saw the first pictures of the A321 Neo. And, as embarrassing as it is to admit that, it's also just, I guess you kind of have to know that before we hop into this conversation. But we've been seeing screenshots here and there of the aircraft as developers normally release before it comes out. But recently this week, which is in which is the week right before it comes out. I believe it comes out on Friday. Am I right about that?
Yep, it is coming out on Friday. I'm hoping Friday at 12:01 a.m. so I can go ahead and grab it. It's funny you're saying that this aircraft is actually your favorite airplane. I was never an Airbus fan, to be honest. When I just started simming, and Boeing was all the way for me. Then I got the 320, then the Toliss 319, and then for some reason, when they introduced the A321, my excitement level went through the roof. Honestly, I'm looking forward to this plane as big as much as you are, and you are a 321 fan. So I am just as excited about this plane, and congrats to Tolus for bringing it to X-Plane because it's going to be good for the community. Definitely, I think so.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to also explain like the scale of my love, I bought P3D and bought the Aerosoft A320, well, A320 extended, I think that's what it's called, just to get the A321 in my hangar. And
Oh
it,
wow.
yeah, I mean, that's the only reason I have P3D these days. Of course, I've added other aircraft here and there. Um, but the aircraft releases in 2 days, and in preparation for the release, of course, pricing and stuff has been announced, um, and also a few other features of the aircraft, such as the full feature list, which adds a few things, and we'll get into that a little bit more because the fact that it isn't an extensive list has kind of generated some controversy in the threshold comments and also some of the Tolias comments. Uh, but we'll start with the good, I guess.
Yeah.
They announced that Totedemac is going to be joining the team. Um, if you don't know about Totedemac, they are responsible for really, really popular textures online on the .org store for the A319. So popular, in fact, I think that I have never seen a Tolias A319 picture without them. Actually, um, they're great. They make the aircraft look so much better and so much more realistic.
Oh yeah. Let me say, I remember when the A319 came out, and the textures were like blah, right? But you can fly the airplane.
Yeah,
The minute the Totemac came out, it literally shot up on my scale of airplanes that I wanted to be in the cockpit and flying. Because at the time, the A320 from Flightfactor was good. The cockpit textures were good. When the Totemac came out with his textures for the A319, even though it generated controversy with Tolus, I think it made that airplane so much better, 100%.
I'm also somebody who's very into visuals with aircraft as well. For me, um, one reason why Microsoft Flight Simulator is so exciting to me is visuals. I really enjoyed the simulator to look as realistic as possible, as I'm sure many people do. But visuals and sound are big things. So that's another great thing that's happening with the A321 is that they're adding IAE sounds by default, and I think IAE engines sound really good. So
Yeah,
that's a big
they
plus.
do.
So they announced these textures that are going to be released with the A321 that are from Totemac. Um, and this was received very, very well by the community. Um, and it is also going to be something that is added to the A319. There are reports that there's going to be an update to the A319 about a week after the A321 releases to bring it up to the standard of the A321. But I think that this is a great decision by them because not only is it great for press because then you're adding something that so many people love, but it also shows that you're paying attention to what other people want, which is something that is not only hard for aircraft developers, I think, because as we've discussed on this show, people want so many things, but I think it's also hard for companies in general to do these days is pay attention to things that people are buying and things that people want and actually delivering on them.
True. It's actually pretty similar to what they did with the Abitav. Remember, the Abitav was just a independent add-on that you can get for different planes, and
Yeah.
now they incorporated that into the A319. So I think it's going to be in the A321 also. Same thing with Totemac. It's just that good. It makes the airplane better. Why not bring these guys on board? And that's what they did. So kudos to them for doing that. So you literally downloaded the airplane out of the box without needing many add-ons or many product changes, by third party. It's good. It's a good look. I like it.
And it also just goes to show how great, well, just how game changing some of these things can be. Just a simple add on. Another thing that happened this week actually was the Jar Design A320 is going to be getting a pretty massive visual update and also systems update soon. And they've added an EFB that looks almost exactly like Avitab. Why did I say it with that accent? But yeah, but it looks almost exactly like that, and I think that that kind of just goes to show like how important the community is to shaping things like this, because you see so many people want this, and then you just integrate it because you are able to pay attention to the market. And I think that that's like I have to give praise to both Tolias and Jar Design for paying attention to something like that, because I know that would probably fly right under my nose. No pun intended.
Makes the immersion factor way
Yeah,
just better.
absolutely.
So that's another plane we're looking forward to. I'm probably gonna have to give the Jar A320 another look when the update comes out, but that's for another time though.
Along with the announcement of this texture thing, I believe it was 2 days ago now. Let me check. It was,
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 days ago, as of this recording.
yeah, it was on February 24th. So they announced the price for the A321, and the A319 is $69, and the A321 is $79, and um, that price was released. And although the Tolias A321 is a very complete aircraft, people didn't feel like it needed to be that price, considering how little was added compared to the A319. Like, if you were to check our website, the the feature change is not that big. It's like the important stuff that you're actually going to notice takes up maybe the page of my computer, and
Right.
that's with like double spaces and such. And people felt as if asking for that extra $10 and charging that high price was a little unfair compared to what was being added, on top of the fact that A319 people did not receive a discount for that, which a lot of people thought was not really fair as well, since they had already purchased the product. I guess people had seen it as kind of like a family of products, since even companies on the other side, such as what's it called, such as PMDG and what was the other one? Whoever develops the really FS Labs,
FS Labs, right?
yeah, they both they don't charge full price in order to upgrade to get extra variants. And it was kind of seen, there was a lot of negative reaction, because you look at that side and you feel as if like that's what you should have.
I've actually gone in my mind back and forth on this since the price was announced and the controversy over the price. At first, yeah, absolutely. My initial reaction was, geez, wow, you know, didn't look like they did much more development to get an A321 from an A319. Stress to fuselage, do this, do that, some system updates, some differences between the two. I was like, wow, that's steep. But on the other hand, and I know I might not be popular for saying this, it's similar to how should I say it? Maybe a Flightfactor 7576, were basically same plane except different cockpit, different cabin. Maybe I don't know. And I'm looking at it from that perspective. Did they need to charge an extra $10? Maybe not, but even at 69, I think it's a fair price. Look, X-Plane needs this, and they kind of know that in the market. Nobody else is even close to get anything like this out there. And the way they have turned this around so quick after the A319 came out, um, I'm willing to swallow the pill for the $79 price to get this airplane, because from what I've seen of it so far, it's similar. I mean, that's what Airbus is. They're just all similar cockpits. So, I mean, you can't really blame the developer as far as saying, "Oh, you didn't do much work on it. It's the same plane. Why are you selling it so much?" It flies differently. From what I've seen, it flies differently. Right. The cabin is different. As a matter of fact, I saw a walkthrough of the cabin, and I was just on an A321 maybe a few months ago, and I have a video of me sitting at the window seat with no windows. And and when I looked at the cabin, the way they modeled it, it looks just like the one I was on. So that work is done. They're giving another plane, not giving, they're selling another plane in the X-plane community that's been missing for a long time, right? The developer is very responsive to change, as we talked about. They are they're just on point with the A319. Like from when it started to what it is now, it's almost one of my most favorite airplanes to fly in the sim. So I'm kind of giving them credit for just being the first to come out with it in a finished stage, not like version point 0.9 or 9.8 or 9.7. It's like a 1.0, right? And I think can only get better. So yeah, I do understand. Like, wow, that's kind of steep for not a lot of work, but I also give them credit for bringing it out for us to have to fly. So I go back and forth on it. As I said, it's tough.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm as you were saying that, I was reading through a few comments that were left on our website just to get like a better idea as to what some other people are feeling as well. And I mean, I initially talked about how excited I was for the aircraft, and that's not something that dies just because I see an $80 price tag. Yes, it does deteriorate my desire to immediately purchase the aircraft because I have to think about it a little bit more. But at the end of the day, it's important to keep in mind that they are competing with other developers. Although this is an aircraft that hasn't been made yet, the developer sphere is still very much a competition. I think that sometimes people forget that that's the fact because developers are designing different aircraft. There's a few comments on our page that point out the fact that this is kind of, and this is also something that you brought up, that this is kind of competing with the flight factor aircraft as well, and that's actually, in my opinion, really really good business if they're making this a competitive product against one of their competitors. And to that, you kind of have to give them credit. And also, like, although the feature list might not be huge, somebody was really quick to point out, and I think that this is completely valid. Um, they said to bear in mind that you get the TSS sounds for both of the engine variants, and that is like custom sounds are usually something that we have to pay at least $20 for. Like every single BSS sound, I think, is about $20. So if you think about it, it's actually quite reasonable what they're saying in a lot of ways. And as you said, this is a one of a kind aircraft. We've never had an A321 for X plane. Maybe it's expensive in the eyes of some, yes, but also there's an argument to be made that DeAndre Newman actually brought up that um, X-Plane users are not necessarily used to paying as much money because we have like so many free add-ons and stuff. And maybe some of this complaining is actually just coming from the way that the community is, um, I guess, formed as a whole. And that might be the bigger thing here is just that we're just not used to prices like
I mean,
this.
I'm saying on a whole, we do fare better than the P3D FSX people of the world because they get charged $100, $120 for an airplane. We haven't approached that price tag over here yet, and I think because maybe just a smaller market share and people wouldn't go for it. But yeah, I think we're going to be seeing that the more popular this sim gets, and the more these airplanes that come out. I mean, we're lucky we have had three good Airbus within the span of a year. 319, 320, and now the 321. So I'm sure they thought about it. I'm sure they went back and forth saying, "Hey, should we or shouldn't we?" But I think they they know that they would win in the end with this price because people just absolutely want the airplane to fly.
And that's what somebody said too. And in our comments, they just said um, they're charging this because they know that people are going to get it, and they're not wrong. I mean, I will eventually get it because I love the plane, and that's not gonna stop me eventually. And I mean, the org store has sales all the time, so if you're complaining about it now, just wait a few months. Honestly,
and you'll get it on a sale. Yeah. But also the price also has to attract new add-on developers to explain, because people are not going to want to bring their products here at all if they realize that they can't make any money here. So that's one aspect that people have to look at to say, wait a minute, we want everything for 40 and $50, but somebody's going to go, how much time I need to put into my product to make a little bit of cash from it versus I can make a good, decent amount of change. And it's that's how it runs. It's the economy, it's capitalism, demand and supply, and people worth people's time basically. Then as I said, I don't know how to develop an airplane. I can't write code, but I can't imagine it's easy. It takes time and a staff or whatever, and bringing other people on board. You're bringing Totemac on board. You got to pay him. Avatab guy's got to get money, and this is the reality of it. So I want the developers to come to explain. I don't want them charging me $100 for a plane, but I think 80 is like the cutoff. No more than that. I don't know.
And I think that showing other developers that you're willing to put competitive prices there, because again, so many people have pointed out that this is on the level of the 757 and the 767 in terms of prices. I think in a lot of ways you have to give Tolias credit for actually uh like going strong through well, pushing through this decision and being competitive, because ultimately, as you said, that's going to bring more people to X-Plane, which I think everybody would love. Like, imagine having every single plane that you could ever want, because developers bring competition over, and that makes more planes um that brings more planes into development. And like, that'd be amazing if I could just go onto the .org store or just anywhere else and just get like an Antonov or something like that, and just like fly that, and just not have to worry about going over to another platform in order to fly some plane, or just having to wait or use a lackluster like free add-on in order to fly a specific plane.
I'll tell you right now, the next developer that brings a good 777 to X-Plane, they're going to be charging $80 for it or more. You know, we lack that. So the room is there for it. Unfortunately, you're just going to have to pay for good stuff. And that's it. Not unfortunately, it's just, it is. So as far as Tolus is concerned, the A321, is it a sweet spot pricing? I'm not sure, but will people get it? Yes, I think so. Definitely think so.
I completely agree. And with that, we're going to now transition into speaking with Cessnarox. It is my pleasure today to introduce Tatiana, also known as Cessnarox. She is a very, very prominent painter. So she paints a lot of different aircraft and stuff. She has recently transitioned from doing X-Plane 11 into P3D, but we will talk about that a little bit more as we get on. Welcome, Tatiana, to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
How's it going today? Is your lazy Sunday morning not too disrupted by this?
Yeah, no, I normally am just playing video games or working on stuff. So yeah, no, this is fine.
Yeah, I saw you were playing World of Tanks. That's an
Yeah,
interesting morning choice. Really gets you banging.
yeah. World of Tanks, World of Warships. Ships are actually like my primary interest. Like I love planes too, but ships really get me going. So anything that has water, planes, ships, it's all good.
It sucks that there isn't like a legitimately good ship simulator out there. Like, I've seen a few, but then they're all just like kind of blocky.
Listen, people are gonna hate me, but if I could trade Flight Simulator 2020 for a good Ship Simulator 2020, I would. So,
Oh.
yeah.
Wow,
Well,
that's surprising.
that's quite a
Yeah,
bit.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm just gonna put myself in hot water here at school.
I mean, compared to flight simulator, what's the pace of a ship simulator? What are
I
your
mean,
missions doing?
that's why that there isn't a good ship simulator, is because so like the last one was Ship Simulator Extremes. Like that's the last half decent one, and they took that, the people that were making that made it only commercial. So they got rid of the entertainment aspect, which I think is interesting when you consider how similar flight sim is, but flight sim has enough variety and like speed that they could keep that entertainment sector going. um but with ships, everything is so slow that I think most people just cannot handle it. um but yeah, I just like large machines, so that for me it doesn't really matter how long it takes. But
Interesting. So for a painter, you actually like large machines. You're like industrial at one end, and you're an artist at the other end. Wow,
yeah,
what a
yeah,
dynamic!
yeah, it's interesting, and this is kind of like what the joy I get out of painting. Um like heavy aircraft like are always my favorite to paint because it's so cool to like see your work like in the simulator, in the scale and the size, and like when you're working on the PSD, or the UV map, or whatever you want, the paint kit. Like you kind of forget because it's just like this tiny file and you're zoomed in on pixels and stuff, and then that moment when you see it in the simulator, it's just like, wow, like look how big
Wow.
that is.
So basically, you're looking from a perspective of painting industrial machines, including
Yeah,
an airplane.
exactly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
That's a very different perspective than I've heard before. It seems like people kind of focus on the smaller details and focus about it actually being in the simulator and as a simulator product as opposed to like a really, as you were saying, like a really big machine. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it.
yeah. Well, and I think I've always had a little different, and this is something that works very well for me and also works against me in terms of people that want me to do liveries for them, which is a lot of people. I think I stopped accepting requests, but that capped out at about 600. um and
Wow.
it's bad because and I'm sure we'll talk further into this. I've started painting because there was a livery that I wanted. And I had too much anxiety to ask somebody. I didn't know who to ask. And so I was like, well, I already know how to use Photoshop. So I'm just going to paint this. And then I was like, you know what? It turned out pretty good. So I put it on the org, and then, you know, keeps going. But I think that's something that still to this day affects me because I'm just like, I'll paint it if I want to fly it, versus a lot of painters, similar to a lot of developers that I know, they'll be like, oh, well, I just want to make this so that people can download. Like, I don't care about flying it or whatever. A lot of developers stop using their products. They just start developing. They stop flying. And that's never been the case for me. Like, every time after I'd make a livery, I'd load up, do a flight in it. Um, so most liveries that I've made are ones that I'm passionate about seeing in the simulator myself.
Wow. So basically, see a need, fill a need.
Yeah,
That's good.
exactly.
So how did you get into aviation? Because it seems like you were already there before painting. It wasn't painting came first,
Yeah,
which is something that I've heard a few times before, which is like, oh, I was an artist and I saw this community where I like enjoyed a little bit and was already into flying and then decided to hop in there and become an artist
yeah,
and then flying came after it.
yeah,
So how did it came before?
yeah. So aviation. I mean, like I said, machines have always been a huge draw of mine, since I was little. And so when I was way younger, my grandparents actually they had a couple planes. Um, they had a few King Airs for their business, and a 182 and a Baron. I didn't really. I was way too young. They had to sell them back in the early 2000s for economic reasons. Um, but I remember like going in the hangar and seeing them. I don't remember any flights on them, but that's like kind of all it took. And I was super into trains and boats. And I lived in Memphis, Tennessee, which is, I know a lot of people don't know much about Memphis, but it actually has like a good um, mix up of industry. It's a massive hub for BNSF, which is a shipping organization. And then you have the Mississippi River, which has a lot of barges and very large barges, and boats and etc. And then you have FedEx's main hub, so there's tons of planes. And back in the day, it was also Northwest Airlines hub. So there was tons of aviation around Memphis when I was growing up there, and I think that definitely influenced heavily the direction that I kind of saw um, my life going into. And I ended up taking my first flight lesson at 13.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I was really young. Um, and it was in a 172, my first flight lesson. Um, and it's a nice area to train in.
In Memphis.
It's really pretty. Yeah, yeah. Because you have to deal with the Memphis Bravo.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wow.
but you also have like Arkansas and grass runways and fields and a lot of landmarks that can be really helpful. So like you have the busy airspace of Memphis, but right outside of it, there's literally nothing.
Yeah, I fly at Van Nuys Airport in LA. So you always have to deal with the Bravo airspace, and then I have to deal with like other stuff that happens at Van Nuys. But then if you go a little bit north, then you have like Oxnard, and you have Ventura, and then you have all of those like little airports there. It seems really
Yeah,
similar.
I think those are always the best areas to train in, like where you get a good variety of airspace. Um, but I mean, I was really young at that time, and I actually took my first flight lesson before I got into simulators.
Oh, really?
Um, or I first flew in a small plane before then, and then it was like at 11. So yeah, it was a little before my lesson. I got flight gear.
Interesting.
And that was actually the first sim that I used, but it was only for a weekend because I had ordered like the SciTech like yoke and pedals, like that suite that's been out forever. Um, I had ordered that stuff and it came before my disc version of X-Plane 9 came in the mail. So I was like, well, I'll just keep using these on flight gear. So I had like a solid like weekend or week where I could do that. But flight gear was awesome back then. I don't know what it's like now. I haven't loaded it up in a while, but flight gear was pretty sweet back then.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, now I'm remembering, this was such a small part. Back when I think I was like 6, I had like one of the flight simulators. It was either FSX or FS 2008. Is that, I can't remember.
2009, I think. Well,
2009, one of the old ones.
yeah.
FS9.
Okay,
FS9.
FS9, yeah, one of the old ones. I like had tried to install it on my grandmother's computer,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a train wreck. Nothing happened. So that was the first attempt, but that was a failure. But I got X-Plane 9. I remember I got it like right when it came out, and yeah, it had just come out. It was like the new thing, and I remember I decided to get it instead of FSX because I was watching YouTube videos of both of them, and it's funny now to me, but what actually got me to do it was the water. I just thought the water in X-Plane 9 looked so much better than the water in FSX.
Returning to that boat thing.
Yep.
Exactly. Water is a big deal for me, so
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that the water looked better, and then that Bombardier, what was that old X-Plane default aircraft, the
Was it the CRJ?
CL-415 or something, that seaplane, the firefighting one.
Oh, yeah, I know that one,
Yeah,
like the yellow one, yeah.
yeah, the yellow and red one, that Javier Roland made as a default aircraft. Yeah, that one was also like okay, this is definitely what I want.
Yeah.
And that was that was my favorite plane in X-Plane 9. And that was X-Plane 9. It was way different than what we have now. Like, I think a lot of people won't know because I think a large part of the X-Plane user base now came in at X-Plane 11.
Yes.
And then even larger part before that started X-Plane 10. There's very few people that started in X-Plane 9 that you can find.
I must have looked at X-Plane 9 for maybe 1 month before X-Plane 10 came out.
Yeah,
And it was a huge step.
it
And
was.
now
It
X-Plane 11
was.
is even more.
Yeah, I mean, the flights that I used to do in X-Plane 9 that I thought were just like, wow, this is so real. Like when I think about them now, are laughable. I mean, I remember. I think a lot of people in X-Plane 11 even are familiar with the Magnite 787.
Yep.
And so that plane is actually an X-Plane 9 aircraft. It came out in the earlier start of X-Plane 9, and that's actually made by a developer who unfortunately has passed away. But Heinz, I do not know how to say his last name, but he went by Heinz, and then so he made tons of aircraft. Heinz aircraft. He had his own website, but the 787 was his sort of flagship. And back then, before the CRJ 200 came out, that was the best plane in X-Plane. This was before Flightfactor even started making planes.
Right.
They started development on the 777. I think soon after the 787 came out. But however, Roman of Flightfactor, he was making planes on his own at that time, and Roman was my favorite developer actually. That IL-96 was the most complicated plane that I had, and that was largely because it was all Russian.
But a big piece of trivia here. You mentioned X-Plane 9. Do you know that the minimum requirements was a 128 megabyte video
Oh
card?
my God.
X-Plane 9. Yeah.
Wow.
Just a bit of trivia there. It just goes to show you exactly.
Wow. Oh, and I forgot, all of this was on a MacBook. Like,
oh my.
yeah, everything was on a MacBook. Not even a MacBook Pro. It was like one of those old white MacBooks.
Like the bubble ones, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
It was, yeah. We were struggling. But
yeah,
I remember I used to do long haul flights in the 787 that used the X-Plane 9 default FMS that you couldn't put waypoints in. So it was direct to.
Oh my God.
Everywhere. I would just put in direct to and go. So, and I thought it was so real. I was like, wow, this is exactly what they do. I didn't know about the waypoints and everything. But because I was just doing, like, I was young. Yeah.
So you're basically looking at over 10 years of flight simming, basically?
Yeah, I think I'm at like 11 now. Yeah, it's been a while. And yeah, I mean, it continued like that for a bit, for a few years, and I didn't really. Painting actually was like the catalyst for me really diving into flight sim as a learning everything about it, versus before it was kind of just like something I'm doing casually because I was focusing more on real life flying. But I've never been interested in GA in simulators, because I don't know, I just was always flying 172s and 152s or what have you in real life, so I was just like, well, I don't really want to do it in the simulator because I'm doing it all the time in real life, so why do that? So I would instead load up like the 777 or whatever and just do dumb stuff.
But
Yeah.
basically something that's really unattainable in the short term, That's
Right.
why I fly tube liners too. So
Yeah.
172, you can go down to your local airport and, do a test flight or a, familiarity flight, but you're not going to be able to get in the cockpit of an airliner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that way. It's just like, I'd rather fly something that I'm never going to have the chance to. I think that's why some of these like really obscure aircraft can still succeed in flight sim. It's just because like people are like, I have never even heard of that plane and I want to fly it, and you can. So, yeah, it's neat. But the early X-Plane 9 days were rough. It's really difficult. And now I actually have an interesting like look back on it. like since um, I use a lot of P3D now, and so it actually has me like looking back into what was going on in the ESP side of things while I was doing my direct to flights in the Heinz 787. Um, so it's just like interesting to see like, well, I could have been doing this if I had not seen that video about X-Plane 9's water. But then think about all the other stuff that would have changed. Yeah, probably wouldn't have painted liveries if I went to ESP. So I think everything works out.
So what would you say the main reason is why you're painting P3D liveries now more so than X-Plane 11?
Um, I and I yeah, this is I've been thinking a lot about this. I made that announcement kind of right when I um came back, just because it was something that I'd taken like about a year off for personal reasons, and yeah, when I came back, I was just like, I don't think that I'm gonna paint much of X-Plane anymore, and I think a big part of it does have to do with um, the new Microsoft Flight Simulator, because it's hard to keep investing significant amount of time in a simulator that you feel like is not going to be uh, that you're not going to use much in the future. But additionally, I think this is something, especially the people that got upset with that announcement, don't realize is I've made a lot of liveries for X-Plane, not for X-Plane. um, yeah, so there's a certain point where you've done so much stuff that you kind of run out of things to do, and the X-Plane development side of things, there really isn't too much going on aircraft wise. Um, like in terms of new aircraft, I mean, you have Flightfactor making updates and releasing variants of the 7.6 and 7.57 respectively, but there's not really many new planes where it feels like something fresh for me to remake liveries that I've done for other aircraft. And even that is not as enjoyable as if it was like a different, totally different thing. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know. I think I made like 300 or so liveries for X-Plane, and it's a significant amount of time. I mean, I average each one takes about 5 hours,
Wow.
so it's a lot of time and effort. And yeah, I kind of reached a point where there weren't any more liveries where I was like, oh, I want that livery, even though I know other people have liveries they want.
Right. Now, I would say that your X-Plane legacy will live on because you've basically covered every single plane in X-Plane that's worth flying.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've painted most planes because I own almost every plane. So like, and that I've even painted planes that like I haven't released the liveries um, for one reason or another. Like either the plane was in beta when I painted it, and I just never ported it to the final version. That's the case for the Toliss. Or I got upset with the developer, and I was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of liveries, and like I understand that other people will want to keep flying X-Plane, and I hope that people do keep enjoying the liveries that I have made for X-Plane. But for me, a lot of my flying has just gone in a little different direction, and yeah, just trying to keep things fresh for me and keep things enjoyable for me. And a lot of this I didn't even like recently, or no, the whole time. Let's see, I've been painting, how long have I been painting? Like 5 years, I think. And so up until like 2 months ago, I refused outright any sort of like compensation um, from any individuals, just because it wasn't something that I was interested in, and people always wanted to sort of bribe their way to the top of my list.
Right.
Like I can't even tell you the amount of like, I'll give you this amount of money if you you paint my livery tomorrow or whatever. Um, it's nonstop, and so it's just kind of something I was like, no, like this is a hobby of mine. This is a passion of mine, and I'm not trying to like mix it in with other stuff. And like when that feeling goes away, I'm not the type of person to come back to it for compensation or anything. It's like if it if the passion goes away, it's really hard to get back into something, and that's kind of where I hit with X-Plane a little bit. There's certain aircraft that I do still love in X-Plane, like the TBM, especially is a great one. I do plan on continuing my work with Hot Start, because I think they're outstanding developers. Um, and I do love painting their aircraft.
For all you X-Plane fans out there, don't worry. All the liveries, or a lot of the liveries he has done, is still available. Cessnaroxliveries.com.
Yeah,
Going to give you a plug there.
yeah,
It's still there.
of course,
Still up.
yeah, and they're definitely gonna stay there. I have no intention of um, ever getting rid of those. And if I ever for some reason have to shut down the website for some reason, I'll try to make sure those liveries either go back on the org or
Let me know so I can grab them before you take them down.
of course, yeah.
Because I have used your liveries over and over and over again. It's good.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, and I think a lot of people don't know because I did stop posting on the org, and so I see sometimes I don't go on the org much at all anymore, but I do see sometimes that people are making liveries that I've done. And I think they just don't know that they're like hidden down somewhere, especially like the JetBlue for the Flightfactor A320. I've done pretty much every JetBlue style, but they're like all in this Dropbox folder.
You've done ones that you haven't even released?
No, they're all I've just done. I did a 24-hour stream one time, and I did I think 18 different JetBlue liveries, like all the
Oh,
different
that's like
tails.
that's the pack. Yeah, I have
Yeah,
that. I fly that like constantly because JetBlue is by far my favorite airline.
yeah,
And yeah, I downloaded that like immediately. I was like, oh my god, thank God somebody has done all of them, because when I used to fly the Jar Design, there was only like two. And
yeah.
it was the blueberry one and then it was the stripes one. And
Yeah.
those in my opinion are the two worst JetBlue liveries.
Right. Yeah. No, that was really fun because those tails are beautiful.
Yeah,
Um,
love their tails.
yes.
You have a total of 20 JetBlue liveries.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
20.
So
Jeez.
Yep.
there was yeah that was a I stayed up 24 hours straight working on those, and I did all the ones that I could. I think I missed three. It was the Boston Red Sox one. I know I didn't do that one, and then there was two ones that had a lot of text on the back of the fuselage, and those are on the Flightfactor. Those are the most difficult um, things. The way the back of the fuselage is cut or unmapped, it's extremely difficult to have like words going over the back, because you have to line up the letters, and it gets really confusing. And I was awake for I think it was 26 hours, and I was just like, nope, not happening. And I was supposed to like get around to doing them, but again, it's a thing where you kind of get burnt out. Um, so I just didn't touch. I couldn't even fly them for like 2 weeks. I was like, no, I don't.
We're
I don't.
so
Traum-
done with this.
Yeah, I don't want to look
Traumatized.
at it. Yeah, it was the same.
Yeah.
I did the same thing with Virgin America, except that was like much easier because it was mostly just changing names. But it's like one of the things somebody dared me. I was like, okay, fine, I'll just do all of them. Like,
Yeah.
and then of course Virgin America freaking goes out of business like a couple weeks after I did that. It was just like great.
Still kind of pissed about that. They were such a great airline. I remember the first time I went on them.
I know. I wasn't expecting it.
And then also right after you released the JetBlue liveries, if I remember correctly, that's when they also released the Nets livery, and I I was like, oh, why is the Nets livery not here? And I was like, oh, probably because it was just released or something. Because I had seen it. You released it, and then right after that, like honestly, like a week or two later, then I took a flight to Florida, and then I saw on JetBlue's Instagram page, it was like, oh, we have this new livery. It's the new Nets livery. And then sure enough, right as I came back from Fort Lauderdale, I was at LaGuardia, and then there is the livery right there. And I was like, wow, I really wish that this was there. And I was confused for a second as to why you hadn't done it, but you know, sometimes airlines don't think about you.
Of course. Yeah, I really wish they would cue me in, you know.
Yeah.
Give you a heads up before time.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that airlines really often do is you paint a certain registration and they change the livery like ever so slightly, or completely redesign the same livery. Like that happened with one of the Jets, New York Jets.
Hmm.
I painted the old version, what the New York Jets livery used to look like, but they like completely redid it. I saw somebody did it the other day and did a very good job with it. But people rest of me, they're like, that doesn't look right. And I'm like, well, that's because it's the old one.
Come on.
Yeah, and it was the same thing with the for the Zebo mod, the American Airlines Astrojet livery. They like removed the bare metal off of the cargo doors
Ooh.
and on the belly, and I was like, are you serious?
You're
Like
really gonna do
really?
me like
'Cause-
that?
yeah, because now everybody thinks that mine's wrong. Like, and it looks the exact same otherwise.
I find the flight sim community kind of strange when it comes to details and liveries. I mean, what kind of criticism that have you gotten, or any really, from just missing a little detail in a livery? People are fanatic about it for some reason.
Something, yeah, it's very odd. um and in line with this, I think it goes with the same thing of people like getting upset, like if I say I'm not doing X-plane liveries anymore. um I think in flight sim, it it has like that little bit of a learning curve that can make you feel so much more I don't know how to phrase it, make you feel smarter than everybody, if that makes
Uh,
sense.
yep, true.
And I think that goes with a feeling of entitlement. So people think like, oh, like this should be how I want it. Like, because I know this hobby. Like this is mine. Like I know everything about these planes. I could fly the plane in real life. Like, you know, that
Right,
kind of
your
attitude.
bleed air pressure is wrong. That's not how it's done.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Like you should have turned the seatbelt sign off. Like,
Yeah.
you know, but I think like all of that stuff goes in the same. I mean, it's like, listen, people are gonna paint how they want to paint, and they didn't necessarily make it for you. They made it for themselves. So like, if I paint something perfectly perfect to real life, like even if I went to the real plane and, you know, scanned everything and got everything perfect, somebody would still chime in and be like, listen, I've worked on these planes and
You're wrong.
this is all wrong.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of something that you just have to ignore, because yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I will say for painters is it's much better um, when you're working on a plane to pick a single registration versus looking up um, like Delta Airlines A320.
Mhm.
Instead, just look that up, but find one registration and then just paint all the flaws and correctnesses of the single registration,
Mhm.
Hmm.
versus saying this is a Delta A320, say this is Delta A320 November or whatever. That definitely helps with the let's call it feedback.
Right. No one
Yeah.
can
Yeah,
criticize. This is the exact plane, the only one. This is how it
yeah,
looks.
yeah. If this plane isn't painted, if the engine's not painted on it, then fine, it
Yeah.
won't be painted on the livery. and people will be pissed, but whatever, you picked that registration and that's the registration you're gonna fly.
They give you crap, then you just send them the link. You're like, this is the registration. You see how that engine's not painted?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, most of the time I've gotten to the point where I just don't respond, and that is a huge benefit of having your liveries on a website or on your own website or on a Dropbox, or something of that nature, is because people are too lazy to go out of their way to tell you that you're wrong. Like if it's on the org or Avsim or whatever, it's very easy for them to like comment and be like, this is all trash.
Too easy.
But they don't. Yeah, exactly. So if you have it where on a Dropbox or whatever, they're not gonna like go and find you on Facebook and be like, listen.
I was just on your Dropbox and I
Yeah.
took the time to come to your Facebook to
Exactly.
tell you that your livery is trash.
Yeah, and I think that's an influence of people that like don't want to put their stuff on the org, myself included. Is just like having to deal with all these people that are gonna like trash your work and tell you like not to paint anymore or whatever. It's just not worth it. And then all the DMs too. I mean,
Really?
geez. Yeah, because people, they'll point out stuff that's wrong in DM, like when they want to send lots of pictures to prove you wrong, because people feel like they need to have like a solid case. And then additionally, they'll like also request more liveries at the same time.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
It's
shocking
like,
to me.
yeah,
Jeez.
it's like, listen, everything you did is entirely wrong and you need to stop painting. However, if you do keep painting, please do these 5 aircraft. Like,
does your does your does your painting for simulators, does that hobby translate into your job in real life, or are they completely different?
they are totally separate. Yeah, there's nothing in common. So before, so I started painting in high school, and then um, and then in college, that's when I really started painting like a lot. Um, and that I was in school for social work, so not related to any one of my hobbies. And um, anyways, that's I'm still technically in school, but it's kind of on a pause. But I work for Amnesty International now,
Oh,
which
nice.
is a
Oh, awesome.
very large human rights group. And I work in fundraising in our headquarters. But yeah, so it's not related at all, but yeah, it has nothing to do with flight simulation. I can't even figure out how it's related because it's not. But it's something I enjoy, and so is flight sim. So, but I'd say the only sometimes there is crossover because painting um, does give you skill that can be easily translated to graphic design skill. Um, and graphic design skill can put you way ahead in painting if you're trying to get in it and you're a graphic designer. Because honestly, most of it is just knowing how to use the software. That's a big part of it. But so I have been able to do a little bit of graphic design work, which I can attribute to my painting career. Um, but in terms of flight sim, no, it's not related to anything I do in real life. I kind of have a separate world once I sit down on my computer.
So have you delved into other games and stuff and tried to paint for them, or have you really just stuck to flight sim?
I've tried it. I there's been a few games where I've wanted to, but I'm so used to the way things are in flight sim that it's like trying to, what's the phrase, teach an old dog new tricks,
Yeah.
So I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not doing that. I think the biggest one that was disappointment was the truck simulator. I really wanted to um, paint a truck, and couldn't figure it out. So
Well, so basically, your flight sim workflow is so good that trying to relearn something else is going to be tough, huh?
exactly, yeah. Even just the switch to trying to do, I'd been doing X-plane livery so long, just trying to do a P3D livery, of which I have now done two. Thank you. Uh,
Congratulations.
thank
Yeah.
you. Um, that was really difficult for me because, I have my particular way that I do X-plane liveries, and I've got it down so well that I could do it, in my sleep. And it's actually how much of it is muscle memory is something that is a struggle when I'm trying to help other painters, which I do a lot of. I mean, my whole streaming, the whole purpose of it is to help painters, and they'll ask me what's the key command to do this or whatever, what's the shortcut, and I never know because I've been doing it so long that I don't pay attention. Like it's just like I do it a certain way. And then all my liveries, like they didn't used to be like this, but I'm glad that I learned it. That I keep it like a very specific folder structure and keep it all super organized because what back when I first started, I made so many horrible mistakes and it was so sad because I would realize the mistakes way later and I couldn't change them because I saved them wrong or the file order was all messed up and it was too difficult. When I first started painting, I used to flatten all the layers at the end because I thought you had to do that to save it. And what that does for people that don't know is it makes all the different paint layers that you made one single image, so you can't edit anything
Oh
anymore.
shoot.
Ah, so you couldn't go back to your master file and change anything. It was just done. It
Exactly,
was
because I
baked.
flattened the master file.
Oh god.
So I'd
Wow.
flatten the master file and save it, and then I used to the big problem. The first plane that I got really into painting was the 767, and the 767 still to this day. In fact, I'm as a matter of fact am boycotting the 767 currently firmly because the exterior textures drive me crazy.
Why?
And other people may not care, and I do not want to ruin the plane for anybody else, so I'm not going to go into detail. But for me, as someone who's stared at those textures close up and tries to fly with them, they bothered me. And even back then, they bothered me. And so, what I try to do to fix it, which is the worst thing, is to just paint it white over, like solid white on top of the textures. But then I'd flatten the image. So then even now, if people use those liveries, there's like this horrible white paint over it, and I can't do anything about it. 'Cause,
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, the mind of a master. He sees the imperfections now. Some people don't, like myself.
yeah, no, it was so. Yeah, it still bothers me. I need to just like remove them all off the org, but then it's like hiding, your history. So maybe not, but
Okay, then.
but it's yeah, it's definitely a soft spot, and that's why like I always recommend like don't download any of my liveries off the org because
They're
if
trash.
yeah, if they're not on my website, it's because I didn't think they were worth anything. And yeah, and then additionally, I don't update anything on the org. So if I make an update to a livery, you have to get it from the website. Like if there's changes or anything. But yeah, it's bad. Just don't go to my profile and look through old stuff. Basically, that's the moral of the story.
So your transition from X-Plane over to P3D is not as simple as people would think it is.
No, it was a process that was like long coming, let's say. And I think, as I said in the beginning, um, large machines. That's my interest. So heavy aircraft is really something that I like more than anything. And back in X-Plane 9, like as I was saying, we had these heavy aircraft like the 787 and 777, and they, like, from perspective back then, they were not bad. So it was fun to fly them. But the issue I had in X-Plane, that was like growing for years, was that there weren't any heavy aircraft that I liked to fly, because the 777 got too dated, and then as I said, the 767 textures bother me, and yeah, so I just kind of ended up in this position where I was just flying planes that I didn't care all that much about. And then I'm watching, like, on Reddit or YouTube or wherever, people flying like the PMDG or whatever, 777, 747, and it gets difficult, to like watch and be like, those are the planes that I like more than anything, and we don't have them.
No, I completely understand. I mean, I get plane add-on envy from P3D just being a X-Plane user only.
Oh yeah, me too.
They have the quality.
I mean, and I think a lot of people can hold themselves back because of the price of it all, but it's definitely something that like lingers. And I think even people on P3D have that, coming the other way. I think if someone can afford to be in both sims, it's definitely the best like setup right now. But yeah, it all just depends on what kind of flying you like to do, and long hauls are my favorite type. So that's kind of where the switch mostly came from. But I definitely wasn't planning on painting, um, for P3D, because there's plenty of talented painters in P3D that even some that I know personally, and yeah, I just didn't see that um, there was any purpose in me joining that. There weren't like really any new aircraft out, um, so yeah, it's just like, what, I'm just gonna let that painting environment do its thing. I'm kind of established in X-Plane, so I was painting for. I was still painting in X-Plane while basically only flying P3D
Oh
Mm.
wow,
for,
wow,
yeah, for like
interesting.
7 or 8 months. I would paint X-Plane and then load up in P3D and do a flight. So I stopped using a lot of my Zebo liveries that I did. I never flew them. I just painted them and I was flying P3D.
Any words of advice for new and upcoming painters, that you drop knowledge on? Just what to look out for, what to stay away from, how to approach the work so they can be as long lasting as you have been in the space.
And I'll also add, if you have any little things to add about transitioning, because it seems like transitioning between X-Plane and P3D is definitely something that other people will probably take a dip their toes into at some point, and it, as you've been talking about, it's very, very different.
Yeah. Well, for painters, I mean, I definitely, I don't stream or paint as much anymore, but when I do, I always recommend that painters come in and ask me questions, because it's much easier for me to give advice and talk about it when I kind of know where a person's coming from. And I try to do YouTube. I've been wanting to make a YouTube series to kind of help. And painting, where largely the mechanics are the same on both sides of the simulator world. So um, yeah, it's something that I do want to do. But like I said before, sticking to a registration. I definitely would recommend not taking request. It's very tempting,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the beginning. Um, it could be good to build experience if you are bad at deciding what to paint. Um, but I think it's easier to keep um, keep your interest in painting if you're doing the liveries you want to do, versus having 50 people tell you what they want.
Right.
Um, so if you're trying to really get into painting and make it something that's a part of your like hobby experience, making sure that it's something you're enjoying is definitely the most important.
In other words, paint what you want first
Exactly,
before anything
exactly.
else.
Yeah, because everyone's gonna want something from you, but that's gonna make you not want to do
That's
it.
true. I mean, I get a lot of flight requests to do routes and stuff, but at the end of the day, I fly what I want to fly because I know I'll enjoy it, so I can give a better show. So you can make
Exactly.
a better livery because you're painting what you want to paint. I get it.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say, and this is something that I think is really big, um, and not just for painting, even for like YouTubers or what have you, the temptation to focus on your brand versus your product. Um, and I'm saying product just as a word to describe whatever you're making. Um, but too many people, they'll paint a livery and immediately try and have some brand name or like set up donations or Twitter or Facebook page, whatever. Um, and I kind of just think it's better to take get to those steps as it becomes necessary,
Right.
versus trying to set it all up in the beginning, because then you're just doing so much work and you don't even know if it's going to be something that you're going to be able to keep up.
So
um,
do what you do best, and the rest will fall into place.
exactly. People will learn your name if you're making good stuff. You don't need to try and make sure they know your name the first time they're downloading something.
Great advice. Great advice. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that makes a lot of painters give up too quickly, because they aren't getting 50 donations when they post their first livery.
Right. They
Yeah,
feel like they're not worth it or something.
exactly. So just do the liveries, and then as people start to know you, then you start building the brand. Um, yeah, but then as far as P3 X-Plane, P3D, working with Sam, I mean, a big thing is just, hmm, the shorthand phrase would just be stay off Facebook, but it's really difficult because everywhere you go, people are going to be telling you like one is better than the other. You can't use both. Like and then even within those ecosystems, like you have the planes or developers competing against each other, and it's like, oh, you cannot use that. Like you have to get this. um yeah, like you Toliss and Flightfactor, no, like,
Choose a side, pick a side.
yeah. So just try and stay away from the divisiveness. If you like something and you want to get something, then do that. And you can take people's feedback, but yeah, honestly, the flight sim community is not the most hmm, capable of giving good feedback.
True,
It's
true, true.
yeah,
Very true.
yeah. Um, but I think just trying to stay out of the turf war is the best move. Um, yeah, and I think it all comes down to remembering that this is a hobby, so you're supposed to enjoy it. You're not supposed to be, fighting all the time.
At all costs, don't allow anybody to pit you against somebody else just because.
Exactly. Yeah, we're all just trying to fly our fake planes.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's a fake plane.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that.
So since we're getting closer to the hour mark, before we wrap it up, um, you mentioned that one of the main reasons for switching over to P3D is because you foresee yourself flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 the most. Um, I have to ask, what is the thing that you are the most excited for with the simulator? And that can either be with your workflow or just flying in general?
Well, so for liveries, I don't see much change coming. I don't know what could possibly change all that much. Um, However, from what it looks like, I'm hoping that we'll get some better resolution capabilities in terms of the files we get to paint on and things like that. More detail is always more fun. Well, not always, but it gives you more possibility. Um, and yeah, but I really don't think there's all that much. I do think that it will, and this is why I'm painting in P3D now. Mostly is just because I do think that the switch from getting textures to P3D will be more similar in getting textures to FS 2020 versus getting textures in the X-Plane, because they do work kind of differently. So I am anticipating that the process will be less of a learning curve on the ESP side. Um, but who knows? I mean, it's something that we just have to wait to find out. Um, if I was an alpha tester, that's definitely what I would be looking at.
So you wouldn't be flying; you're trying to modify the liveries that are there or make your own right away, huh?
Yeah. I may load up, but yeah, I definitely would want to be seeing like how it's gonna be and see if I can learn. Maybe make some for default aircraft so that when it's out, I can you know already have a little section or whatever.
Have like a foot in
Um,
the door.
yeah,
I
exactly.
I have no doubt that you guys are going to have a whole ecosystem around the Microsoft Flight Sim 2020. It's human
Yeah,
nature.
exactly. Well, and that's the thing, like what I was talking about before, like with regards to keeping that fresh feeling. There's nothing more fresh than having a brand new sim with all brand new aircraft that don't have any liveries.
Yeah.
Like
Fresh canvas.
exactly. Yeah. So it makes it hard to paint old stuff, because you're like, but look at that. Like,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah. But in terms of flying, there's so much stuff to possibly be excited about that it's really hard to pinpoint it on one thing. Um, Definitely the water.
Going
as
back.
as mentioned before, the water is something I'm really excited about. Because it looks really good.
Maybe you can get a boat in there or something.
Exactly. Somebody's gonna make a mod or something. I know it.
No, combined boat. Maybe somebody made a car for X-Plane 11. You can drive around in the sim. Maybe they can
Oh
do it with
yeah.
a boat. Yeah, yeah.
People might not know it. They're not on org anymore. But back in X-Plane 9, there was actually, I cannot remember the name, but there was a payware developer that made tons of cars. There was like a Humvee,
Oh my
Really?
god.
all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it was. They made a lot of vehicles. Um, I wish I had a picture, and I know that I owned one at least. Um,
I'm pretty sure there's like a Dodge Charger available or something like that right
yeah,
now.
there was a bunch of stuff. Yeah, that was wild. But yeah, no, I think, and then of course the weather. That looks like a massive improvement from now. But it's mainly just something that I think, well, I'll just have to wait and see, because I do think that a lot of it's going to depend on the third party development, and third party developers seem pretty excited about it, and I think that's also what's building that hype, is because of how interested, especially on the ESP side of things, that developers are into Microsoft Flight Simulator, and they seem to be doing a good job of keeping developers involved as well, um, from what I can tell.
That's a good thing because third-party developers actually bring life to a simulator.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and it seems like they're not making the same mistake as some other simulators in the past that shall remain nameless. Um, but yeah, it just seems like they've made a lot of improvements, and everyone that has it seems to think it's great. I don't think that it's going to be the Grim Reaper, so to say. There's definitely still going to be room for people to find a reason to load up X-Plane. My big one is helicopters right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So and same with P3D. It'll probably be a while before you can do a decent long haul in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Um, so yeah, I think there's going to be a few years, but I think most people are excited for how it's going to be in 5 years.
Yeah.
True. 2 years.
Um, yeah, even 2 years. I mean, who knows? But I think that also depends how easy it is for developers to port stuff into that simulator, especially if it can supposedly load up FSX stuff. Who knows? Like, who knows?
Is there anything else that you want to, say while you have this opportunity on microphone to people who follow you, or uh, just in general?
uh, Not too much. I mean, you know, people ever want to say hi, they can always pop into my stream if I'm streaming, or say hi on Facebook. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the liveries that I make. Hope people fly well, and I really hope. I've always wanted people to get inspired to start painting on their own, because I think there's still a lot of room to grow for quality painters on in simulation in general, but for people to really enjoy doing the work, and it's making art, and it's nice. Yeah,
Yep. And let me say thank you so much for these liveries because certainly used them before I even saw that you
of
streamed
course.
online,
Yeah.
and the quality of them is very good. So plug you again, Cessnarockliveries.com. They're still there for you X-Plane guys out there who are crying right now. It's going to be not much. It's still available for you guys to have. So it's good. Definitely, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Nice.
thank you so much for being with us today, Tatiana. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm really happy that you're able to join us on this um kind of like this new era of in-flight, where we're trying out this more conversational instead of a back and forth. I think it went really, really well, and I'm really happy to have had you on.
Yeah, it was great. It was really fun. Hope I didn't talk your ear off.
Honestly, that's what we want, because that's more content.
That's what we need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of Inflight. If you want to see more from Tatiana, be sure to check out Cessnaroxliveries.com to see all of her work. I'm a big fan of hers. She does really, really great liveries. Thank you so much again, Tatiana, for being on the show. And thank you so much, Norm, for being my new co-host. I'm really excited for us to continue working together. Anyways, thank you for listening to Inflight. Catch you guys next time.